What are we doing in the black community? The number one consumer of a Mercedes-Benz
It's us.
us. The number one consumer of a Gucci and a Louis Vuitton, us. And they don't even advertise. Why is it that in the black community, we are always the number one consumer, but we're not the number one creators?
So you just said it. The fact that there's consumers and creators. For so long, we assume success based on consumption.
Yes, indeed. Welcome to Closing the Gap podcast, Truth About Black Wealth. You're tuned in to WATV 94.9 on your FM dial, and you can also find us on YouTube at Closing the Gap Podcast, The Truth. You can also find us on anywhere that you get your streaming podcast from. You can listen to us, and we pray that you will tune in, subscribe, and also share with others if you definitely enjoy what you hear. I am your co-host, Mr. Eddie Richardson, here with our host and the owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors, Mr. Wilbert Hamilton.
Yes, sir.
Good day to you, sir.
Yes, same to you, brother. Same to you.
Yes, indeed. It's always a pleasure to be able to come back on the radio show and on YouTube to be able to speak to you all and give you the truth about black wealth. And today we want to, as we close out this month of March and this first quarter of the year of 2025, I must say, Wilbur, that this has been a roller coaster ride like no other.
Yes, sir.
This is, oftentimes when I pray to God and I say, hey, today is a day that I've never seen before, nor is it a day that I'll ever see again.
Mm-hmm.
So far, this first quarter of the year has been a quarter that has never been seen before.
Mm-hmm.
And I pray that we never see another quarter of a year like this again. So much uncertainty in financial markets, and as a result of the election and things that are going on from the White House, that it seems unsustainable,
Yes,
to say the least. But as we come here, we are affected by these things, and we can't deny the fact that these things are on our minds, and we also know that they are on your minds as our listeners and subscribers to the show. But in addition to that, we come here to try to not only ease our own minds and settle down and be reminded of the fact that God is in control, and the fact that if we have a plan already laid out, that no matter what the variables that happen around that plan, it's important for us to continue to look at the plan and stick to the plan. And no matter how much uncertainty happens, we have a certain God, a God that always provides stability, a God that is always sustains us no matter what is going on in the world. And so as we come today, just thinking about, how we can procrastinate and lose our passion for doing what we need to do as a result of everything else that is going on around us.
yes,
And there's no better time to do that than as you get to the end of a quarter. We always look at benchmarks in life.
Mm-hmm.
In everything in life, you have benchmarks. If you exercise, you have a certain benchmark that you're trying to reach. If you're trying to get healthy, you have a certain weight that you are trying to reach, whether losing weight or gaining weight or gaining muscle, or even in our finances, we always want to have a plan, and we want to reach that goal, reach that benchmark in our finances. In faith, wherever I am and whatever I'm doing, I have a certain benchmark that I'm trying to reach for the day, for the week, for the month, for the quarter, for the year. And so as we come right now, I'm going to just talk about how we can keep procrastination from killing our dreams and keep the passion and fire for what we are striving to do, keep that fire lit inside of us.
Yes. I mean, I think one of the best things that, one thing I've learned in life is to try to count it all joy.
Mm-hmm.
So as chaotic as things have been, of course, to start the first quarter of the year, we have the emphasis on planning, writing it down and making the plans, and sticking to it and following through it, holding each other accountable, and continue to go back and see if revisions and alterations and changes need to be made to that plan. But the only way to know that if you need to do those things is to have a plan to begin with.
That's right.
You know, so we implemented the plan and we're trying to execute the plan. And, you know, but I think one of the joys that we can take out of the first quarter, as chaotic as it's been, is that every now and then God sends a signs of you know what, it's time to get the house in order. You know, and a lot of times we won't take that step or we won't make those things happen unless he shakes things up a little bit. So I think right now we just have to take it and say, my job is I'm going to count it all joy and say, you know what? The Lord said, I'm going to shake things up a little bit on this first quarter just to make sure you're sitting down, you're evaluating your situation because, you know, like most of us, when things are comfortable, we don't feel like changes need to be made. You know, we're not willing to, you know, make certain sacrifices when we're getting all of our comforts, needs, and wants met. But once those needs and wants start to go away, and all of a sudden, you know, you start to feel a little hunger pain here and there. You start to feel some financial pain, some financial stress. Then all of a sudden, you kind of start looking and say, oh, you know what? Maybe I need to get some things in order. You know, so I just think we have to take it as just a sign of the Lord is trying to, he always gives us those warnings.
Okay.
Of, you know, that check engine light coming on that car. Like it ain't broke down yet, but he letting you know something ain't quite right. You know, that low fuel level comes on before that car run out of gas, you know. So we have to take heed of the signs that are being presented in front of us, because if we don't, eventually you will run out of gas. Eventually that car will break down if you leave those things unchecked. So, you know, right now God is sending the signs and letting us know that, hey, you know, there's some things going on, obviously in the financial world and, you know, political world and just in our world in general, that you need to take accountability and start to take the next step of not just looking at the plan, but like we talked about earlier and previously, of actually implementing those plans, seeking the right help to actually make sure you execute those plans and then constantly reviewing those plans. So, you know, I just like to, you know, take a time and take a second, take a step back and say, you know what, even in times of chaos, you know, that's when we got to count it our joy the most and ask God to just, you know, reveal to us what is it that he's trying to show us in those times where we need to make those corrections and adjustments so we can come out better on the other end.
Yeah. As you say that, I think about the story that Jesus shared in Matthew 25 about the 5 wise virgins and the 5 foolish virgins. And, you know, he said that they took their lamps, and some of them had oil in them. The wise had oil in them, and the foolish didn't have oil in them. And they went out and they tarried and they slumbered and they slept. And then there was a cry at midnight and said, oh, here comes the bridegroom. And the ones that had their lamps trimmed and burning with oil, they were prepared. And the ones that did not have, they came to the wise virgins and said, hey, can you give us some of what you have? And the key in that is that, first of all, in regards to our talk today, is that there is a cry that's going to come in the midnight, right? And that's where we are right now, right? I do believe that the cry is going forth in the midnight. We have so many different attacks on different facets of government, and which are also affecting our financial status and our financial stability at home, and also, you know, how much money we have to spend out of our home now. That is changing rapidly, you know, just to meet needs, not even the wants that we have, but just taking care of the needs. And so when we come on here, what we are striving to do is help everyone become one of the wise virgins that has enough oil for your lamp. And when we say that, what we're saying is having the plan financially to sustain you and your family for what it is that you will have to do in your life.
Yes.
Right. All of us are going to have to move. You know, all of us have things that are going on, but sadly, the wise virgin didn't have enough oil for the foolish virgin. Not that they didn't have oil, but it just wasn't enough to take care of those that were right there with them the whole time and did not pay attention and do what they needed to do.
Correct.
So what we want everyone to do is when we are coming on the show and we're talking about putting together a plan for your life, a financial plan, and we're talking about reviewing things with sitting down with a wealth advisor, what we're saying is get the oil for your lamp. Get the money that you need. Look at your life and do the things that you need to do. Because too many times we get into a mode of slipping and sleeping or sleeping and slipping, right? And that's what happened with the virgins. They would sleep. And when you fall asleep and don't have what you need, you end up getting caught slipping. And I know sometimes that's somewhat of street terms, you know what I'm saying, to get caught slipping. That's one of the worst things that you want to do. But that goes, you know, in everything. We also talk about that in the church. When I'm preaching and pastoring and witnessing to people, we're striving to tell everyone that, look, the end is going to come at some point. And before the end comes, you need to make sure that your salvation is secure in Jesus Christ. You need to make sure that you are obeying God's word and doing what he wants us to do, following his plan through, so that when he does come back, you will be prepared. Same thing that you do with finances is saying, hey, look, rain is going to come, trouble is going to come, but if you have made your plan, if you have things correctly laid out for yourself, then you had an umbrella of protection. You have those 3 legs foundationally that you speak of all the time when it comes to laying out a plan. So we just want everybody to wake up. And if you're woke, we want you to stay woke. All right, because I think that's one thing.
Oh yeah, we like I said,
consider
watch as well as pray.
Yes,
you know that I think we tend to get caught, and we have gotten caught in our community a lot of times. You know, we've prayed too much with our eyes closed. You know, we missed a lot of things that are going on around us. And I always ask people, I say, well, if you pray with your eyes open versus praying with your eyes closed, does God not hear either one? You're hearing both of them, right? So for me, I like to pray with my eyes open, you know, so you can see what's going on around you. You can, you know, like I said, Proverbs told us, you know, not to conform to this world, but yet be renewed
by the transfer
of our mind.
Your mind.
So if I'm doing that, then, you know, I'm able to see what's going on around me and have an understanding of what's going on around me, but not operate according to what's going on around me. But I do need to know what's going on around me so I can avoid certain pitfalls, so I can avoid certain things. I think all too often we've gotten too caught up in almost being holier than thou in certain situations and not being aware and having a solid foundation, understanding of what's going on around me so I can avoid certain things. You know, God is not going to come now and hold our hand and walk us through this thing. You know, he's given us a thing called free will. He's given us, you know, intuition. He's given us a relationship with him where that voice in your ear that's telling you not to do certain things, that's God telling you, hey, man, you know better. So he's giving you everything you need to help you make good decisions. Is it, are we listening to him? Are we listening to ourselves? You know, are we letting, you know, sin control our decision making? Are we letting our flesh control our decision making? And we have to take that personal accountability because, you know, everybody wants to, you know, unfortunately, we have too many people that's blaming everybody else. You know, is the government at fault for certain things? Absolutely. Are there certain conditions that our community is in because of things that were implemented and structures that were put in place to halt our progress? Absolutely. But at what point in time are we going to say, you know what, enough is enough? Let me do what I can do. Let me put my feet and my hands to the plow and push forward, trying to make things happen. Because as we talked about before, hard work can help to create more opportunities. And the reason why that is because when people see you working hard, they're more apt to say, let me help you. Because we've all seen that, you teach a man to fish for him. You know, we all want to teach people how to fish. So now you can become a fisher of men yourself. You know, so now I ain't got to do everything. That it ain't the pastor's job to bring everybody to Christ. It's his job to deliver the message once the people get into church to help evoke some change. And hopefully they do come to Christ. But he need the congregation and the people in the pews to say, hey, man, you know what? Hey, man, come to church with me today. Hey, he needs you to be waking your son or your daughter up to bring them to church and not leave them at home and let them sleep through the Sunday service. He needs you waking them up and bringing them to Sunday school. He needs you making sure that those things that used to be the norm
Yeah.
back in the day. You know, mama always made sure you got some word in you. You gonna get up and you gonna go to Bible. I don't care whether you like it or not. And I think a lot of times today we've made things too much about personal comfort versus a necessary that needs to happen regardless of how comfortable it feels to you in that moment. So a lot of things we try to appease, you know, our kids. We want them to have everything that we didn't have, and we've almost given them too much freedom. You know, but at the same time, a child is a child, needs to be in a child's place, and your job is to teach a child. A child is going to always say, if you give them the option to stay at home and sleep and play video games versus going to church, they're always going to stay at home and sleep and play video games. You know, that's what we expect them to do. They're a child. They don't understand what they can get out of being in that church. And even when they're there, they don't fully understand it. But at some particular point in time in life, as we know, growing up in the church, what's put in you will come back out of you. And when you needed to come back out of them is when they got to a point where they're living in this world and they need that voice in the ear to be loud enough where they can hear it on what not to do, on when to leave that party, on when not to take that wrong turn and make certain decisions that they can't come back from. So we need to have that personal accountability in all areas of our life. You know, we just kind of lead with, of course, you know, Christ-centered and, of course, the finances, because that's what we're building on, and we want to help close the gap in our community. But there's so many other layers to that can help that. Because if you stay out of the wrong place at the wrong time, I promise you to save you some money. Because most times if people look at where the most money is being spent in places they probably had no business being. You know, you spent too much on Friday, Saturday night. Well, where were you when you spent that money? Well, you using the club. You drunk too much. You had too much fun. You're going to the hookah lounge. You enjoying yourself and your vices a little bit too much. Where if you probably got some things in line in order, you probably saved some money. So now all of a sudden you got some money to invest versus saying, well, I don't have enough money to talk to a financial advisor. God gives everybody enough to survive. Now, it's up to you to figure out and decide what type of survival you want to have. Because there's levels to survive it.
Correct.
You know, and you get to a place where you can thrive. You know, don't be mad at someone else because they're thriving, because you don't know the sacrifices they made to put themselves in position when they can thrive. Because everybody has to make a conscious decision. Because regardless of how much money a person makes, if they don't do the right thing with those funds, if they don't save, if they don't protect, save, and grow like we've talked about, if they don't create a financial plan, it can all be ruined. It can all be destroyed with the blinking of an eye. So, you know, we have to just start taking that personal accountability and, you know, as you would say, be the change we want to see and put ourselves in a better position to be successful and stop procrastinating and stop slipping. As my dad would say, you always got to keep your head on the swivel. You know, we say that on the football field, but also that was just a term in life. You always keep your head on the swivel and know what's going on around you. And that's that watching while I'm praying.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. When you were talking some of that and about the personal accountability, it reminded me of the story of the ant that's in the book of Proverbs, chapter 6. And the teacher in Proverbs says that, or the wisdom that comes from that is that it talks about the ant versus the sluggard, meaning that the person that procrastinates, the person that wastes time in doing things, and the person that is looking for somebody to push them to make them get something done. It says that the ant, her ways are wise. The ant doesn't have a guide. The ant doesn't have an overseer. The ant doesn't have a ruler. But the ant goes and provides itself its food in the summers and gathers what they need for the harvest. And says that the ant does not sleep, right? The ant stays awake. The ant continues to move. And so it presses the sluggard saying, look, get out of that mode of procrastination. Wake up out of your slumber. Wake up out of your sleep. Open up your hands and get rid of the poverty that has overcome you by putting in the work that you need to do. Don't wait for anybody else to make you do something, but realize that whatever situation you are in, wherever you are right now, that it's your responsibility to move, and it's your responsibility to move in the progress, and realize that procrastination impedes progress. And if you're slipping, you're usually sleeping. We'll see you after this commercial. Welcome back to Closing the Gap Podcast, the truth about Black wealth. I am your co-host, Mr. Eddie Richardson, here with our host and owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors, Mr. Wilbert Hamilton. You are tuned in to WATV V94.9 on your FM dial. Also, you're finding us on YouTube at our YouTube channel at Closing the Gap Podcast, The Truth. You also can listen to us on any of your wherever you stream your podcast shows. You can listen to us. Before the commercial, we were just talking about the scripture, Proverbs chapter 6, verse 6 through 11, where the wisdom that comes from that talks about the ant and how the ant doesn't have an overseer, the ant does not have a ruler, but the ant steady works, right? The ant steady works because the ant realizes that it must work and store up meat for the season that it is in. And when you think about an ant, right? You said this, that let's talk about that ant's life cycle, right? Ant is born and then they move into an adulthood, but an ant's natural life is only about 6 to 10 weeks. And an ant is constantly working and storing up during its lifetime. It never stops. Each ant continues to work and never stop. It doesn't slip. It doesn't sleep. It doesn't procrastinate, but it continues to move toward progress. The ant has that innate thought. And I do believe that we have that nature as well within us, but oftentimes we constantly sleep and slip and don't move and do the things that we want to do. Like you said, we spend our money in places we should not be spending it. We waste some of our time. And we're not saying that you shouldn't enjoy yourself, because I'm sure that the ant eats part of what it stores up.
Well, you know what the crazy thing about it is that it's nothing wrong with, enjoying yourself, but too much of anything can be a bad thing. I think we need to enjoy a lot more in moderation in today's time. We do too much for our own personal consumption. And it amazes me how, creatures that are not blessed with our mind and our ability still have the forethought to build and plan for generations that they'll never come into contact with. When the ant is storing up for seasons that it's not going to be able to see. If an ant comes along in the winter, it's not going to see the spring. If it comes along in the spring, it's not going to see the fall. But they're always preparing and planning as if they will. Yeah. So how can we as people, as human beings, as children of God, gonna let an ant outgive us to our future generations? Now we giving bills and not wills. We giving debt and not trust. I mean, we got to do a better job. I mean, I'll be something, I can't say the word on the air, to let an ant or any animal who doesn't have the ability I have outstore me. We hear about, whether it's, certain animals and how they hibernate and how they store this and they store that. Everything prepares for the future. A bear, before it goes in hibernation, it eats enough. So now when it goes, it'll last through. It takes that long sleep, that long break, but it survives through. You have that where you have alligators and crocodiles where they stick their nose out of the water so they don't freeze to death, and they lower their heart rate so they can maintain through the winter. Everything is planning and preparing for the future, but us. Everything leaves the next generation in a better situation, but us. So we have to take some personal accountability because God left us in charge of all of those things. So if he's left us in charge of all of and left us in charge of the lay of the land, and he's given us sound mind and body to be able to make decisions and to make improvements and do the best we can and, uplift our situation, I always have a question, why are we not doing it? And the reason why is either we have disconnected from God, because I don't believe there's a man out there that can tell me that you are connected to Christ and you are operating Christ-like, but your mind is not set on trying to leave your family and leave a legacy and put your generation in a better position. Because the Bible I read said righteous man leaves inheritance to his children. So now that's relative to your situation, but you can leave something. I'm a firm believer in a good name is worth more than silver and gold. I'm feel like I'm a great recipient of that. I was named after my father, so I believe I received an inheritance.
Yeah.
Not even financially, but just from a respect and from a trust and an admiration standpoint based on the name and how he carried it. So I'm proud of my name. So obviously I want to give my sons and my family a name that they can be proud of, but I also want to leave them, in a better position so I can improve the education level. I can improve the situation, the circumstances, the opportunities, those opportunities to dream. I was blessed to have a place where when I graduated from college, I was blessed to be able to go back home. And that's the reason why I'm sitting here now and the evolution of my life is going the way it's going, because if I couldn't go back home to my parents' house when I finished college and I had to go straight into the workforce, so to speak, and I had to go get an apartment, I had those bills that would have been, accumulating, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to take a step back and see what I wanted to do in my life and choose to go into financial services, which was it's purely a 100% commission-based job at the time. I didn't have a base salary, but because I had a foundation, I was able to go back home. It afforded me the opportunity to dream of what I could turn it into. See, I stepped into a career where they said, well, there's no base salary that we can give you. But the benefit of this is you can make it what you will. And if you're willing to put in the work, if you're willing to go out and make some things happen, the outcome and the benefits from this can far outweigh anything that you would have done on a base salary standpoint. And because I was in that blessed position, my parents had a foundation where I was able to go back home to get myself together. It allowed me the chance to dream. So now in the process of that, of me having my relationship with God grow, and he says, man, you know what? I want you to teach people how to create generational wealth. But if I wouldn't have been in that situation, I wouldn't have had that chance to dream. If I'd have been forced into the workforce and, my dad said, hey, man, you can't come back here. Now, he said I could come back here. Now, he made some conditions that I had to come back. There were some things that had to be done. I couldn't just sit around the house and just live there rent free. There were some bills I had to chip in with. There were some groceries I had to help pay for. So he gave me some responsibilities, and I think that you should have some responsibilities.
Yeah.
But
Agreed.
because of the soft landing space that he gave me, it gave me a chance to dream about what I wanted out of my life, where I could decide what direction I wanted to go, and I wasn't forced. So, as parents, we all want our kids to have a better life than what we had, so to speak. But you have to do some things along the road and along the way to make sure that you have taken care of yourself and you've given them a safe landing spot. Is it worth you overspending, buying kids clothes, toys, and shoes that they had earned and don't deserve, and you haven't saved for your retirement? So all of a sudden, when it's time for you to retire, you can't. And when they need the help to come home, they can't. Well, now you've eliminated the possibility of them being able to dream. And now you put yourself in a position where you will never be able to stop working. So just by creating a little bit of discipline, and we all have to do it. We all buy our kids things that they don't deserve.
Right.
We all give them, things they hadn't worked for and hadn't earned. And they are the recipients and beneficiaries of our success to a certain extent. So it's nothing wrong with that. kids are going to be spoiled to a certain extent. But the key thing is to a certain extent.
Yeah.
You have to draw a line in the stand and make sure, say, you know what, let me make sure that I'm giving them some things that money can't buy. Character, integrity, work ethic. These are things that you are going to need. I don't care how intelligent you are. I don't care what area or field of study you go into, but character, integrity, and work ethic are going to be necessary and mandatory. And one of the greatest things I tell people that they need in any area is going to be passion. And see, passion can only be derived when God has given you the vision, the gift, and the dream. That's when passion comes in, because passion don't die. Much like joy, the difference between joy and happiness. Happiness is fleeting. Joy cannot be taken away.
That's right.
The joy and the peace that God gives can't be taken away. So we need to have those things, but we got to have a relationship with Christ. And once Christ has told us the direction that he wants us to go, now it creates a passion that don't die. See, I was blessed and afforded the opportunity to dream, and that dream gave me a passion that regardless of what was going on in my life, good, bad, or indifferent, that passion wouldn't die. So I always got up striving and achieving every day. Even when I had a bad day, I knew that the next day was going to be a better day, because I knew I had a passion that just an undying thirst to continue to go and continue to move forward, because God had gave me what he wanted me to do, but it was only because I had a chance to dream.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And we want everybody to have a passion, and whatever you're passionate about, put a plan together on that passion. And then once you do that, that passion will become profitable, because every dream that God places in you has a benefit. And when we talk about profit, not only financial profit, but then just a profit for your overall life, right?
Yes.
Profit is something gained, right? So as you said, we gain peace, we gain joy, we gain wisdom by following those passions that God gives us, because a passion can also be synonymous to the gift that we have, right? What we've been endowed from God with. And so when we do that, then we want you to move with it. Don't be sluggard, become a sluggard. Don't waste the time in it, but move forward, because when you do that, what you also get is you get a new level of freedom.
Yes.
Right. And you get a new level of freedom, and that's what Christ gives us. Christ gives us freedom from our sin, freedom with our souls.
Yes.
And then that's what enables us to be able to take care of all of the things that go on in this life.
Yes.
And that's what a good financial plan also does, right? It provides freedom for us.
Yes.
A good financial plan provides freedom. And without freedom, I would dare say that you cannot chase your passion because you are bound by something, because your mind is locked, because you're not moving in the way that you have true capability to move with. But if you define that passion, be wise, move, store up, then you will end up reaching financial freedom, and a financial plan produces freedom. And within the freedom of a financial plan, I want us to do a quick review for the people about it. Within that, there's risk management, there's retirement planning, there's estate planning, and that's what produces a financial plan.
Yes, sir.
So let's talk about that for a minute, Will. Let's review those three things, because as we said, we're ending the quarter of the year. And it's always a good time to do a quarterly review. I know last week we talked about doing annual reviews. We did big scope last year, but now getting back to us and where we are and what we've given thus far, we're going to hone it back in and talk about quarterly review, looking at your risk management, retirement planning, estate planning, which defines your financial plan.
Yes, sir. So, I mean, every one of those areas is key, because if you mismanage one of them, it's a detriment to all of them. We always start with risk management. People say, well, I just want to invest my money. I don't want to have risk management. But what if you get disabled and your income all of a sudden disappears and you can't afford to save for retirement? What that retirement plan going to look like? And what happens if, you leave this earth prematurely and you don't have any insurance in place? What does that retirement plan for you and your wife looks like? You know, what does an estate plan look like if you pass away prematurely, if you don't have your insurance in order? So, you know, people like to talk about the sexy stuff. We want to talk about the stocks and the bonds and the mutual funds and the investments in crypto and real estate, and all of these things are wonderful. But if you don't have the proper risk management in place, if you don't have the proper protection in place, and we talked about protect, save, and grow. If you don't have the proper protection and risk management plan in place to make sure, God forbid, if something were to happen, if you're not blessed to see retirement, does your family and your wife still need to retire? You want her to retire at some point in time, right? Well, whether you here or not, she still need to retire. So you still need to have the risk management put in place. No one plans to become disabled. No one plans to, to go into a coma. No one plans to have things happen to them they can no longer earn an income.
Right.
But that happens in life. And we don't get to pick and choose who it happens to. Because if we could pick and choose who it happens to, it would never happen.
Never happen. Huh?
So life is going to happen. So you have to have the proper risk management and protection in place to offset for those life events that are going to happen. We all hope they don't happen to us, but what if they do? What have you put in place? What are you thinking about to make sure that the income that you're earning continues on? Because that's the biggest loss that comes about when a person passes away. It's the loss of income that person generates. So if you're making $50,000 a year and your youngest child is 8 years old and they're going to be in the house at least another 10, but with college, that's another 14 years that you're going to be responsible for this child in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Well, that 50,000 disappears and that's no longer here for the next 14 years. How is that spouse able to keep things afloat? That means they either got to pick up another job, or we got to downsize, we got to change some things. Who wants their family's quality of life to change just because they no longer here? If anything, we want our family's life to be able to maintain because they're already going to be dealing with the loss of you. So you want everything else to remain as consistent as possible and have some sense of normalcy so they don't have to struggle and worry about anything other than just grieving at that particular point in time. See, in our community, all too often, we haven't done the risk management. So when someone passes away, we're scrambling trying to figure out how to take care of this and take care of that. We don't ever get a chance to actually grieve properly because there's too many things going on. Now, if we can take care of the risk management, all of a sudden now I can grieve properly. You never get over a person passing away.
Right.
You just learn to deal with it better, and you can compartmentalize to a certain extent and be able to move forward with your life, understanding that, I've accepted the death. I know that God has them in a better place now. I can accept it. Now I got to move forward for myself and for the ones around me that I'm still here responsible for. So if I'm comfortable financially and that's one less strain off my back, well, it makes that transition process a lot easier and a lot smoother. Not saying it won't be tough, but we want to reduce the levels of stress. We deal with more health concerns in our community, I believe, because of financial stress. You think about what strokes and high blood pressure and cholesterol, these are all things that you can link back to your financial situation. Because guess what? If you've done a better job with your finances, you can afford better quality food, which helps with your cholesterol, with your blood pressure. You can afford to take time out and go to the gym if you plan for this and plan for that. So, doing a better job with those things can help us be better all the way around, can help us avoid, hopefully, some of the risk management that we may need to have in place if we're being a better steward over what we have coming into us. So that risk management is key, and without that, it makes the retirement planning null and void. And the retirement planning is necessary because people usually want to talk about making the money and they don't think about really leaving the money to somebody else until they get about 65, 70. That's when they got the grandkids. And all of a sudden they start thinking about their own mortality, but retirement planning is something that starts in our community all too late. Most people don't think about retirement planning until they're 55 plus. Oh man, you know what? And 65, 10 years away. Man, I got to get some things together. I need to put something in place. Well, at that particular point in time, unfortunately, they start thinking about it, but the action is not equal to the work that needs to be done in most situations because you're making decisions without having consulted who? A financial advisor, without talking to a professional. So now you haven't assessed your risk management. We know there are gaps in your plan. the retirement planning that needs to take place and making sure you understand how does Social Security work? How does your pension work if you have one? How does your 401k truly work? You know, all those things. And if you haven't planned for the retirement, there is no estate planning. Estate planning does not exist. And that's why we don't have estate planning attorneys in our community. If you ask and look around at how many Black African-American estate planning attorneys you have in the state of Alabama, it may be very few, 1 or 2 at best. It's not an area of focus. Why? Because if there's no retirement plan put in place, I can guarantee and promise you, ain't going to be no estate plan, because it ain't no estate that we done left behind. Welcome back to Closing the Gap, the truth about Black wealth. Of course, I'm your host, Mr. Wilbur Hamilton. Of course, here with my host, Mr. Eddie Richardson. And we were going to jump right back into it right here on V94.9 WATV, and of course, on our YouTube, and of course, all of our podcast stations. We're going to jump right back into the episode. And of course, we were talking about risk management and retirement planning. And of course, if you don't have a retirement plan, it leaves the estate plan null and void, which is why each step is necessary. And you know, we need to start having some estate planning because we are doing better. You know, I don't like to always, like I'm always kind of beating us down to a certain extent, but we are doing better. We are more fortunate. We do have better paying jobs now. We have a lot of successful people in our community that are doing well. And we want to acknowledge those people, but we also want to acknowledge the fact that you need to start taking steps to do a better job planning, because we want more of those people in our community. Because the more of those people we have that are doing the risk management, that are doing the retirement planning, which leads into doing proper estate planning, the better off our community will be, because now there's assets that will be left to various institutions in our community. See, if I've done the risk management, I got my insurance and I got those protections in place, and I've done the retirement plan where I've made sure I'm never going to run out of money when I'm in retirement, and I can live comfortably the rest of my life. Well, now that the insurance money that I'm leaving now goes and turns into the estate plan, now there's assets that are left to be divided. So I can say, you know what? I want to leave some money to Cap Alpha Psi. I want to leave some money to Omega Psi Phi. I want to leave some money to, you know, Miles College. I want to leave some money to Alabama State University, Alabama A&M University. I want to leave some money to the Boys and Girls Club. Well, you can do this if you've done some planning.
Right.
But if you haven't done any planning and you haven't made sure that you're going to live and be comfortable in your retirement, how is those entities ever going to ever receive a blessing or an endowment to be able to build for the future, to be able to turn around and help somebody else? So we have to start doing a better job and making sure that we're doing that risk management, retirement planning, and then start honing in and understanding that estate planning is a necessary part of making sure that our assets transition and transfer to the next generation. All too often, I hear people saying, well, I'm just going to let them figure it out. Well, why would you leave something to chance that you can create certainty around today? If I can make sure my real estate that I own will go to my son or daughter, well, I can make sure that it goes to my wife without being contested, without having to go through probate, without having to deal with any of the issues of the court system, and having it maybe be lost in transition. Or maybe, you know, we can't afford to go through the transition process because we didn't leave any assets to pay for them to hire an attorney to go through the court process. All of a sudden, that home or that real estate is being lost in a tax sale. It's being taken and seized in an auction. And all of a sudden, I saw a story the other day where a home was lost and it was bought at auction for $85,000 and turned around and sold for $1.2 million. All because there was no estate planning in place. Yeah. We think about the value of the land that people own in Birmingham, Alabama. The value of the land is a lot more than what they're going to ever tell you the value of that land is. Because we've seen far too many cases, they tell you the house ain't worth but $100,000. Then they knock down the house and they sell their land for $200,000. It happens all around Birmingham all the time. We look at the redevelopment of a lot of your major metropolitan cities. You know, they're leaving the suburbs, buying up the inner city, and then revitalizing it, and then turn around and all of a sudden the same property that used to be, they told you wasn't worth but $100,000 is now worth $500,000. So if we can maintain those assets and maintain that property, now we can start to build and transition and create some generational wealth in our communities and putting our next generation in a better position, in a better situation, under better circumstances than we have today.
Yeah, that's excellent. And what we have to remember is James 4:17 says, it is a sin to know what you ought to do and then not do it.
Mm.
So what we're coming on here is saying that, hey, to know, to get the knowledge that we're sharing and to already have some of the knowledge that you already know, because as you said, we don't come on here to try to berate our people or anything, but we want to try to encourage
Yes, sir.
and press us toward the progress that we need to be. Many of our people know a lot of this information, and for those that don't, you are getting the information. And we want you to move on it, all right? We don't want you to just sit on it. We want you to move to progress and then do what you ought to do, because not only is it a sin before God, but it's also a sin to you, right? It's harmful to yourself. It's harmful to your children. It's harmful to the subsequent generations of your families that are coming behind you if you don't move and put the plans in place and execute them, right? And so we've been talking about planning, and we know that quite a few of our listeners have been putting some plans together.
Yes, sir.
Right? They've been putting plans together. They're working the plans, and their plans are being successful. So also what we want to encourage you to do is there's another acronym, PDCA, right? It's PDCA, and we want to encourage you all to do is that, and PDCA stands for plan, do, check, and act. Once again, PDCA cycle is plan, do, check, and act. And this is a way to review your plan, right? This is a way to review whatever plan that you've written out for your life, whatever financial plan you have, and whatever business adventure or project that you're doing personally. It's always important to have time that you review your plan. And in this plan, do, check, and act, so you already have a plan, right? But the plan is, the P part of the plan is check your actions to see, am I achieving the expected outcomes that I wanted within my plan, right? We are in this, in the first quarter of the year, and we want you to utilize this PDCA cycle to take the time to look at your personal plans, your financial plans, and whatever type of plans you have. And you do the P, you look and see, am I achieving what I desire?
Absolutely.
My outcomes, what I wanted them to be, right? And I'm sure that the ant does the same thing. When the ant leaves the compound, the mound, and goes out to gather, that when the ant comes back and stacks it up, the ant looks at it and says, okay, based on my life cycle and who we all have in the mound, do we have enough? And if not, they do a review, look at the outcome, and then say, okay, hey, I need to go and do this, right? And the ant doesn't have anybody over them. The ant doesn't have anybody tell them, but the ant takes the time to do their own PDCA cycle to look at it. Then after you look at where your outcomes are, now you put together another action. Now it's time to do. Now it's time to implement and move. You know, oftentimes that's where I get stuck a lot of times personally, right? Is in the doing stage. I will do a portion of it, but not fully carry out everything that I need to do. So what I want to tell you all is that when we're sharing this, when I'm sharing this right now, this is a time of vulnerability that I'm also holding myself accountable to PDCA, right? To make sure that I go and do what I need to do. And doing is the actions according to the plan. Am I carrying out the specific actions according to the plan like I need to? If I said within my health plan that I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going 2 times a week, and I'm going to go from this time to this time, and I'm going to exercise and focus on these muscles and this health gains and goals. Now I check it to see, all right? I do a review on myself and say, okay, hey, did I hit my benchmarks? Did I hit what I needed to do within the gym today, right? Then on the action part, now as I move to act, I look at everything that I've done, I look at my findings, and now I implement improvements and corrections to what I have to do, right? And Mr. Hamilton does this all the time when it comes to my financial plan. He'll do it for your financial plan. Do a PDCA. We plan, we do, we check, we act to make sure that the scope of what we want in the complexity of our goals that we actually achieve those things. And so we want you to take the time to do that. I want you to remember that acronym, PDCA: plan, do, check, and act. Those 4 steps to review. And remember, if you know what you ought to do and you're not doing it, you are sinning against God and you are sinning against yourself. It's a good time to take a review in this right now, that we make sure that we realize that the time is now.
Yes.
Right? The time is now, that every day that we could wake up, that the time is now to move and achieve and do the things that we need to do and to achieve the goal that God has planned for us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I always say, you know, wisdom is the most valuable asset, but wisdom not applied is not wisdom at all. You know, so, remembering that it is a sin to know and not do, I think that's crucial, because we all know things in our life that we should be doing that we're not doing. So to know that you are, you're sinning against God, because when you know better, you're supposed to do better. And I think there's areas in everybody's lives where, we can hold ourselves accountable and be better at, knowing and doing. I definitely, when I sit down to make those meal choices, you need to be doing a little bit better, but instead you choose this option over here because it tastes a little bit better. So doing and not doing. So we all got to know a little better and then do a little better, because it's for our benefit. These are things that, we all have areas of our life that we want to improve upon, whether it's financial wise, whether it's health wise, whether it's, our relationship with Christ. We all need to grow and become better, better stewards over everything that God has given us. And that includes our wealth. That means our health and our bodies. That means our relationship with Him. So all these things need to constantly be checked and evaluated and taken a look at, from time to time, to make sure that, we're getting better. I always say, if I'm not getting better, I'm getting worse, because I'm getting older. I should be getting wiser. So I should be applying more and more knowledge, more and more intellect, because I've had more and more experiences with God over the time. So my trust and my faith should be continuing to grow. So I should be listening and follow Him more and more each and every day. If your faith is not growing, how much trusting are you really doing? Because if you trust in Him, I promise you, He's going to bring whatever you bring before Him to pass. He's promised it. He who remains in me and my word remains in him, whatever he wished for, it shall be done. And I can say I'm a living witness of that. And that's in all areas of life. We've all wished for things, whether it be, a health situation to come out good, whether it be a financial breakthrough that we needed to pay a bill or to get ourselves back above water, or, praying for a new job, a new opportunity, whatever it may be. We've all had those times when we've sat down and we've prayed a little harder than normal. Yeah. We've been a little more committed than normal. And in anything that you become more committed in, you're going to get better at. We just have to carry that over into every area of life. There was a time when I was committed to being in the gym and working out because I was a football player, because I knew that was a necessary part of me being able to go out and be better on the field. Well, I'm no longer on the field, but I still need to apply those lessons that were learned in the gym and apply those to my life, and apply that same work ethic, that same determination, that same tenacity that I attacked those workouts with. I got to attack my life with. I got to attack my job with. I have to attack my family with that same level of unrelenting desire, because there's plenty of times when we get up and, our kids ain't always doing everything we ask them to do the way we ask them to do it. They're doing it sometimes on their timetable. They're doing it with their own level of enthusiasm, and it ain't up to snuff. It ain't quite what it needs to be. And every night we need to correct them, because they don't understand when we tell them you're not doing things the way you need to be doing. They say, well, I got it done. I'm like, well, getting it done when you wanted to get it done is not getting it done the way I want it done.
Right.
I wanted you to get it done 2 weeks ago, because there's been 2 additional weeks we could have put towards something else, and we could have accomplished another goal by now. But I understand that, because me being an older man, my value on time in life is different than theirs. My sons are not going to value time in life the way I do, because they feel like they have so much more in front of them. I'm at a place where I understand that the value of time, the value of life. So I'm going to place a little bit more emphasis on it. So when I go to the gym, when I go to work out, when I go to, study and train and improve myself, whether it's in my career, whether it's my relationship with Christ, I'm going to bring a different level of passion and a different level of energy to whatever it is I'm doing. But it's our job to train and teach our kids on, if they can learn to do that now, how much further along will they be later on?
Yeah. No, that's good, because we pass that on to them.
Absolutely.
Right? We are the parent ants, so to speak. We are the ones that understand the brevity of life.
Yes.
Right? That's why the ant goes out and does work like the ant does, is because the ant realizes I only have 6 to 10 weeks to live. And the ants that are coming behind me are going to have that same amount of time, but they don't realize that yet. So the fact that I realize the brevity of life, then I am going to utilize this time and put forth the effort that's needed to get the things that the next generation needs. I'm going to do that work. Also, as you said that, I was thinking about back to the scripture on the wise and the foolish virgins.
Yep.
Right. Our children are young. They don't know. So, I'm not going to classify them as the foolish version because they are not at that age yet. But it is incumbent upon us to demonstrate the wisdom that we want to be passed on.
Absolutely.
That's why we come on this show weekly, because we are striving to push the wisdom to the people through finances and through faith in God. Realizing that your faith in God is foundational to your success, and no matter what it is that you're striving to do in life. And then also your finances are, what you need to be successful in this realm of the world, right? In this earth, even you said earlier about, don't be conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. So each time that we come on the show, we are renewing our own mind.
Yes, sir.
By planning the show. But then also we're striving to renew the mind of the listener. When we talk about renewing the mind of the listener, we are reviewing what we talked about. We're striving to provide wisdom about the things that we talked about, because the wisdom that you have is your most valuable asset. The wisdom that you gain is what's going to drive you to do the work that needs to be done. Without wisdom, we may not do any work. Why? Because we don't feel there's a need to, because we lack the drive, we lack the wisdom, we lack the knowledge, we lack the understanding that is necessary to achieve specific goals.
Yes.
And so when we come on this show every week, we'll try to give you more specific information about your finances, more specific information about how to get your faith rooted and grounded in God through Jesus Christ. That's our desire, is that you grow as we grow, and you know what we know, right? We're not withholding knowledge. We're not gatekeeping anything, because we realize that too many times in the world, there have been too many gatekeepers, too many people that have withheld the knowledge and withheld their experiences. We also come on and we're vulnerable. We're sharing our experiences with you. Why? Because we realize at our age now of where we slipped and made mistakes along the way.
Absolutely.
Right? When I was, first started cutting hair, I was getting money. And as you talked about earlier, where you spent your money at, I would, we didn't have all the automated credit cards and debit cards and things back in the late 90s, early 2000s. So in the barbershop, I was getting cash. I'm young, I'm brash, and I'm getting cash. So as I get my cash during the week, I'm going out to eat. I'm going out on dates. I'm going and hanging with the fellas all during the week. I'm buying whatever comes, whatever hookups, stolen goods, as it was then, but we just called it the hookup.
Yep.
Whatever came through the barbershop, if it was some shoes, if it was some polo shirts, or whatever it was, I was buying it and then putting it on and going out fresh for the weekend. And once I did that, at the end of the week, I would go to my drawer and count how much money I had at the end of the week.
Mm-hmm.
But I had blown so much money during the week. And there was a man came in there once and he told me and another barber about mutual funds and investing. And I procrastinated on doing it at that time in my 20s. And then when I started having kids in my mid 20s, early 30s, I wasted time and I didn't get it done then. But then later on, I ended up meeting you and you began to do this. And then I said, you know what? The time is now. The time is now for me to stop being a slugger. The time is now for me to stop sinning and not doing what I know I need to do. The time is now for me to become a wise man and put some oil in my lamp so that I can keep it burning. So we want everybody, don't let procrastination kill your dreams, but to move forward and stop slipping and sleeping on the knowledge, but put it into action.
Time is now.
We'll see you next time.